My take is that personality is key to having a successful community, successful developer relations program. You need to bring like part of yourself in it. And when at the last event, we saw Puff sharing some cool stories on stage, figure out, okay, he got something to tell us. So a round of applause to this gentleman. So before we proceed, quick question to all the DevRels. How many questions did you answer on Stack Overflow? No? Okay, we gotta wrap it up. Sorry, guys. Yeah. And I think that the reason for that is because Puff answered 18,000. There are no questions left for other people on Stack Overflow.
That's the reason Puff is speaking to us.
Yeah, so let's turn into the interview mode. Yeah, is it good?
Hi. We're going to sit down, right?
Yeah. Let's see.
Wait, so nobody answered any questions. Did you ask any questions? Okay. Now, seriously, did you downvote any questions or answers? You did. You know you did. We all do. I also know that nobody asked any questions in the past, like, 6 months, because it's been a wasteland on Stack Overflow, right? There's nobody there anymore. Which, we'll get to your questions in a bit. Storytelling mode, like. So, I'm a 20+ year software engineer turned DevRel. And honestly, this happened at some point. I was at a company and I wasn't all that busy, and I was like on weekends just trying to also do some fun tech stuff. And I started answering questions on Stack Overflow. And then I discovered like this thing called Firebase that people were asking questions about. I had discovered it already. It was a peer-to-peer data synchronization platform. And apparently I'm old because there's now tools that are the new Firebase. And I was trying to figure out, okay, how do you do NoSQL data modeling? How do you do like these things that people are asking? So I started just answering those questions and learning as I answered, which is the reason I do a lot of these things. And then at some point, like I get a comment on one of my answers saying, "Nice answer, Frank," from like some guy named Andrew Lee, who Wayne just mentioned. I was like, who's this clown? Why does he think I need this sort of like, why doesn't he just upvote? Like, he's one of the founders of Firebase. So they reached out 3 months later asking, hey, do you want to join our company? And Firebase back then was not part of Google, but definitely like already turning heads in all of Silicon Valley. And I said, I really appreciate that you asked me, but sorry, no thanks. I just joined another company. I can't do it to them. Turns out I was the first person to say no to a Firebase offer. A year later, I was ready to move on from the other company, and we started talking about it, and that ended with me joining Firebase just after the acquisition by Google. And essentially, nobody ever told me to answer questions on Stack Overflow, but I just kept doing that. So 18,000 is the result of essentially about 7 to 10 answers a day, 365 days a year for about 10 years. Never the goal, by the way, but it does lead to being one of the top 20 people for the past decade on Stack Overflow. And interestingly enough, the number one, anyone know who the number one answerer on Stack Overflow is? He's like the Chuck Norris of Stack Overflow. So okay, it's John Skeet, and he's also a Googler, and he actually answers more questions than I do. He has double the number of answers, but mostly why he has a lot more reputation than I do is that he answers about languages, where I've answered mostly about frameworks, and it turns out that languages have a much longer shelf life than frameworks do, because there's new Firebase tools, but there's no new C#, for example, or new Java, right? There's new programming languages, but people are still using the old ones, where, okay, people are also definitely still using Firebase, but they just have a longer shelf life. So, talking about DevRel, I chatted with a lot of folks already, and definitely a very cool discipline. Yurii, you had some questions, you think?
Yeah, welcome in. So what really inspired me to have Frank on stage was when at the last event, one of the participants approached me and said, how do you think, could I ask Frank to become my mentor? And I was like, you should go and ask him. And second, like, I think as a person, it's a certain set of qualities and personality that when you see the person for the first time on the event, you hear a couple of stories, you want to learn from them. So I think we are all here in a learning mode. And what are your top 3 takeaways from becoming a good, a legendary DevRel?
No pressure.
So I didn't share questions with him before the interview.
And since we're recording, I try to think slightly more before I speak. So, which is not necessarily my normal mode. It's actually not true. One of the reasons I don't need to know the questions is because I'm camera safe all the time, which is definitely a good trait for DevRel to be, right? Like, I will a bit more if I'm not prepared. It's interesting because I don't think I ever really trained to be a DevRel, so it's really hard for me to find the traits. But the things that are called out and that I've repeatedly have to point out to others are definitely like a handful, I would say, where it's like... So Firebase has, who knows Go links? You must definitely. It's like a short link, go / and then something. And Firebase had at Google like Go Firebase Voice, which was, this is how Firebase speaks to its developers, its audience. And I had to point that out to so many people because, and it's things like, who has been at the keynote where we are so excited to announce today, sorry, no, wrong voice, that's my voice. We are so excited to announce today this new feature. Very common, right? And there's 2 things there. Like, you don't need to tell me that you're excited. You need to show me, right? Also, announcing something makes me feel different from you. But we're all the same, right? I happen to be sitting here because it's a bit weird if you're looking at the back of my head all the time, right? But we're part of the same group. When you're making a developer product, you need to make it clear that you're part of the audience. So my normal phrasing for that is, I'm so happy that I finally get to share this. We've been working on this for a bit already, but it's just so much fun. It's a very simple change. There's a few things there, right? One of them is that you hear that I'm excited, I hope. I didn't announce anything. I'm easily excited, which is definitely a good trait for DevRel to have. It's actually, I did a video for Google at some point, like a short vignette, where they also didn't tell me the question. And we had done some other things that like where they had a script or something. And then there was this vignette of like, hey, we just want to ask you one question. Like, sure, let's sit here. And then it's like, what's the best career advice you ever got? And I have many of these, but the one that I said there is like, when I was early career, I was already a quite happy camper. But I had one friend, teammate, who was like, leveled up. I was like, how are you so happy all the time? I asked him at some point. He said, Puff, it's easy. I'm easily entertained. Which is actually really true, right? So I can be excited about anything I announce and talk about for the simple reason that I am excited about it. Now that's a trick, right? Like, but I really am excited about it because if I'm not, you're going to see that. Right, so today I'm very excited to be talking about DevRel, and tomorrow, or 2 weeks ago, I was like doing some how to grow into something like Keynote. Right, I'm very excited about that, and then people are asking me about Firebase, and I'm very excited about Firebase. That's actually a really good segue to the second one. I've been a developer for 30+ years, or in development domain. There have never been enough software engineers. So despite AI and all kinds of layoffs that are happening, I've always been optimistic about this market and the fact that, like, I always joke, right, the best time to become a software engineer was 30+ years ago when I did it, right? The second best time is now, and I think that's still really true. that also means that I never feel threatened by other people wanting to become a software engineer. And I think most of us don't feel threatened by that, right? Despite actually, if you now see like the feedback that is given to people that like the vibe coders, do we have strong opinions in the room about vibe coders and whether they are software engineers? Like, we probably do. You're probably all being very quiet because Puff might call you out. Yeah, right, that's scary. Like, I love it when people can build apps that couldn't do it before. So, right, Wayne said about Convex, right, and it's a reactive database. It synchronizes between clients. When Firebase introduced that 13 years ago, apparently already, that was not a thing. The most like up-to-date you would ever see in an app was pull to refresh. You remember that? Like Twitter introduced that. They like actually patented it and then told everyone that they could use it. I doubt they would still do that today. But right, pull to refresh was like the state of the art before that. And then right, Firebase comes out with a database that auto-synchronizes the data between clients and handles all of that for you with a fairly simple API across all kinds of platforms. I happened to join that company, right? Like I was like, and back when I joined Firebase, you had to, this was in the beta, you had to explain why you wanted to be allowed in the beta. And I, after joining, looked up what I typed, which was, I can't wait to see how this changes the way people build apps, which indeed for the decade that I worked on Firebase was what brought me to work. Because it allowed people to build something that they couldn't build without that technology. And that's what motivates me. So when I decided to leave Google, which happened probably 2.5 years ago, I left about a year ago, but I knew that that was going to happen long before that. And I was like, what do I still want to do? What motivates me? And like that led to like sort of a bit weird, but a mission statement for me, right? What's my mission in life? Which is to help more people build more apps. And I joined Flutterflow because this was literally their mission statement. I'm no longer at Flutterflow, by the way. I left about a month ago, but no bad feelings there. But I thought Flutterflow was an IDE to help the same people build more apps. And that was interesting to see. It was definitely for a different audience, it turns out. I was like, okay, what else can we do there to help even more people build apps? Right? There's two sides to this, right? There's helping the same people build more apps, which is something that Firebase did essentially. Or Firebase made everyone a backend or a full stack engineer, right? Like, and I look for tools that allow more people to build apps. Whether that was 30 years ago, Visual Basic 6 that suddenly allowed all kinds of salespeople to build apps. Mind you, those apps they built were horrible. Right? Like they were so ugly, right? They were so badly structured. The thing is, out of every 100 of those apps, maybe 5 of them were actually usable. The other 95 were just for themselves, right? Like every sales manager has optimized his own flow, like you would do now in their own flow, excuse me. Like you would do nowadays in like a spreadsheet or something with some app script or VBA, right? And they suddenly could build an app, but 1 out of every 1,000 of those apps was something that I might use. And it wouldn't exist without that tool. And that's the same I see today with all the other new developer tools that are coming out, including all the LLM-based tools. So I try to not use ML or AI as terms there. They're tools for me, not brains. But these tools allow people to build apps that they couldn't build without them. And I think that is wonderful. That's empowering. That doesn't mean that the tool has to be that for me. I happen to like figuring out what the tool does. I also happen to cringe when I see that it generates ridiculous code and that it still can't figure out how many closing braces need to be like after a statement. Right? Like that's where its problems are. But I love it when a tool like that comes along that allows more people to build these apps. Back to what you need to like about that. 2 weeks ago, I was at a conference for Flutter developers. Somebody comes up to me and says, yeah, I'm doing a new project, and I'm sorry, I'm using Supabase for that. I'm like, why are you apologizing for using Supabase? I love Supabase. Right? People think that because I worked on Firebase for a decade, that I hate Supabase or other technology or Convex. It's like, no, that's the worst thing you can do. Right? What I want is for developers to have the best tools. I'd like to work at the company that makes those tools. But my first goal is that you have the best tools. Right? So Firebase was a NoSQL database. Supabase decided to be, they say, the open source Firebase alternative. But honestly, they were the SQL Firebase alternative. Guess what? Most people should start with a SQL database. You really should, right? Like the only reason people picked Firebase's NoSQL database because they knew it was from Google or something, right? Like that's not, sorry, we're recording. Need to be careful there.
It's not an YC event, so yeah, we can say a couple of words about Supabase, which...
Yeah, and that's the thing. Well, also YC. No, so honestly, but being supportive for all technology is really key. That's one of the things I had to do at Firebase repeatedly. It's like I will never talk down to competitors. It's actually in Go Firebase voice very explicitly. It's like Firebase is not the solution for every problem. We should not pretend that it is. If somebody comes to you with a relational data model, right, and they want to put that in Firebase, your first question should be, why are you trying to put a relational data model in Firebase? Right? Why don't you pick a technology that's better suited for that? Nowadays, Firebase has Data Connect, which is backed by Postgres, so there is an option, but for the longest time there wasn't, and that's okay. Because what I want is that more people can build more apps, right? You want to be supportive of other technologies. So there's no competitors, right? There is just other people that are also trying to reach those developers. That is a key in developer relations, and something I had to do repeatedly at Firebase was correct people. It was at some point Guillermo from Vercel somebody had like real problems getting Next.js working on Vercel, and at some point Guillermo started responding to that. And then like the person comes back and says, oh, yesterday I did it on Firebase app hosting and got it working. So didn't care anymore. And then one of my, at Firebase, Eng directors responds to that with a, see, they didn't even need a director's help. That's a bad message. Don't be that person. You've won, and now you're coming in and trying to gloat publicly. So that you won't find that tweet anymore because it was removed very quickly after I pointed it out to that person. But you want to be supportive of everyone, right? Like mostly what you want to do there is like, hey, what gave you trouble on Next.js on Vercel? How can we make that easier? Is there something that Firebase maybe does with its app hosting that Vercel could also do with Next.js, right? Like, is there something they could figure out there? Can we help them with that? Because you might, right? You might end up working for them at some point, but that's not the reason. There's plenty of jobs out there for somebody who takes this mindset. Right? And that's important. So be easily entertained, have a positive mindset, and I would say having a mission in life really helps for me. That's definitely some later stage career, I think. But it's something that helps me, for example, now I'm trying to figure out what my next step is, and I'm in no rush there, but like I definitely notice that a lot of companies that are reaching out are of a type where it's like, it just doesn't match with my mission, or maybe not with like the activities that I like doing most, which is being on a stage or things like that, right? Like I'm not a tech writer. Nothing against tech writers. I married one, so I should love them. But right, it's definitely not the thing I am uniquely qualified for. So find your own qualifications.
Okay, all I can say at this moment is thank you, Puff. So I'm officially running out of questions. No, I'm joking, but that was a beautiful answer. You touched so many different angles. So, and I want to switch the focus a little bit to events, and then we will get back to the natural philosophy of DevRel and relations between developer, technology, Stack Overflow, and the company. So it was really beautiful. But we see these amazing numbers, scaling from 100,000 people to 4.5 million. So you went through this. Could you tell us a little bit more about like this story? Probably your most moments which were ups, moments which were downs. Tell us about the story. incredible growth.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been a ride for sure. I always want to be clear there because I noticed at some point, right, I helped Firebase grow from 100,000 to 4.5 million users. I didn't do that, right? Like that's not the thing, but I was there for the ride for sure, right? It all starts with having a good product. And that's what drew me to Firebase as a developer, right? That also made it easiest for me to be a fan, right? It's like I was a user. It's how Firebase got a lot of its initial staff, right? So people that were emailing Firebase essentially on like, hey, I'm trying to do this. It would be great if your API would also like do something. It's like, cool, do you want to come build that? Right? It was very common for Firebase. Events is what you said, right?
Yeah, and also, like, speaking of the growth, so when we were preparing for this, you mentioned trust as being one of the main resources for successful scaling. So with Firebase, like, share just a couple of tricks, or what, like, is it technology itself which was so good that people trusted it, or was there anything on your side that you were making for developers to trust in Firebase?
Oh gosh, we had so many of these. Who knows Parse? Yeah, and it's not okay. Like I expected a bit more. It's still out there. Parse was also a backend as a service platform acquired by Facebook. Like Firebase was acquired by Google, and honestly, Parse was kicking our ass at some point. And back when Firebase joined Google, it was 3 products: auth, database, and hosting. And we already were like fairly quickly working to expand that to 16 products, which was going to launch by I/O 2016. And then January 2016, in fact, I think January 16th, if I remember correctly, Facebook announces that they're shutting down Parse. And right, the first is like, yes. And then it's like, because I actually don't like it when they shut down a competitor. It's one of the moments where I learned to not think that way. Because guess what? Facebook had done a wonderful job. They spent like the 6 months before doing that announcement rebuilding the Parse like infrastructure that they had for being hosted on a single machine. So they rebuilt Parse server from the ground up to be self-hosted. So they come with this announcement and they say, it's like, look, but you can self-host it from now on. So they got no backlash, almost no backlash. And everyone like responded with like, see, the same is going to happen to Firebase. Right? It's going to happen to Firebase. Google kills every product, right? Like it's known for that. By the way, Google doesn't kill that large a percentage of its products. Google has a lot of products, right? And it kills a percentage of them. Plenty of products where I don't agree with them like being sunset, but it's a fairly low percentage. So with Firebase, we had to think about like, what do you do? Right? Do we respond to this? And I was very grateful for my VP at the time, who actually said, like, we're working on something. Let's not respond to anything. And let's just wait until I/O comes around and show people that we're not clamping down, we're growing. And that's been one of the constant things with Firebase. Right? It's like, don't pre-announce things, just show them. Right? For the longest time, I could always say people were like, right, Google's going to kill Firebase, here's the proof I have, right? And I'm always like, you're not in the room. You have no idea what you're talking about. But that's not a great message, right? You have no idea what you're talking about. It's never the answer you want to give to a question. Right? If you ever do want to give that, then make sure that you're not on a stage, but like one-on-one with somebody, right? It's just like not good messaging. Regardless of what you learn on social media from some leaders in tech, right? Like that's not what you want to be doing. That said, right, you want to show people that there's growth. So for the longest time, I could say it's like Firebase is actively hiring, right? Like our team is constantly growing. Like these types of things you can say. Never lie, by the way, about something, right? That's one of the things. That's the worst you can do. Any marketeers in the? We do. Like I always joke, we don't lie because then we would be in marketing, right? But it's not true. Marketing also doesn't lie, but it's a different spin on the thing.
One off-top question. Do you mind if we add developer marketing people to these meetups, or should we keep them off? What do you think? Huh?
Well, this, by the way, when I'm talking to companies who are considering like starting in DevRel, it's like one of the first things I ask is, who does DevRel report into? Because I definitely make a distinction there in reporting into marketing versus reporting into product. Versus reporting into support maybe or something, right? Those are very different. It's not necessarily wrong. I want you to be intentional about it. Growing Firebase was by the way, I wrote about it on probably half a year ago or something, about the cycles that things go through. And it's been very interesting for me because in addition to Firebase, I also did lots of Flutter work at some point at Google. And Flutter is a later technology, right? Came along later. Flutter started in 2017 or something, Firebase in 2012, so 5-year lag time. And we all know the adoption cycle, right? It's cyclical. You have to cross the chasm, right, from early adopters to late adopters to right, all these things. But you also like see an excitement there. And it's one of the things I started tweeting is when there's a new technology and they release a new feature for that technology, everyone looks at like that new feature like, this is amazing what they did. And they think, what can I build with this and what will they do next? That's always. Firebase, very simple. For 5 years, whatever we released, the answer was, again, no full text search. Right? Because the database had no full text search, and that's all people would ask about. And it didn't matter what new feature we would release. It was, again, no full text search. Reframing things is a specialty of mine, and it took me a long time to reframe this one. But it turns out that when you're the market standard, you get judged on the things that you don't have. And that's okay. So I could reframe this sort of negative feedback into it's like, yeah, we're the market leader. We're supposed to get that. But it was very interesting when I, for the first time, saw Vercel getting this type of feedback. Right? Firebase launched app hosting as, honestly, sorry guys, I'm spilling the beans here, but like a Next.js hosting service. And when that came out, everyone was so excited because they could finally get away from Vercel. It's like, huh, that's interesting, because Firebase is a more mature platform than Vercel is, right? It's just older. But somehow the cycle had reset, right? So it's a cycle. And Flutter was going through the same thing. Flutter was like very much beloved early on when Firebase was already attracting more like hate. And then at some point, Flutter also started getting the hate and the constant questions of like, right, when will Google kill Flutter? And it's like, it won't. There's no intention of that. Right? And people are certain that it is. And it's like, they're not in the room, right? These people have no knowledge. But they heard from somebody. It's like, nonsense. Right? But it's cyclical. And that's what you have to realize, especially if you work in this domain. It's a lot harder to deal with constant negative feedback if you can't frame it into it's like, ah, that's because we're the market leader. But if you are a startup still and very much constantly get negative feedback, then it's probably time for a pivot. Right? But for a mature platform, it's actually fairly normal. It's like you're the market leader. You are the one that they begrudgingly use. Right? And that's okay. Right? That's how Microsoft got to be the biggest company. That's how right, Amazon like conquered the world. They actually don't attract that much hate in a sense. Like they are just doing something more interesting. Like it's more constant for them, I would say. Like so you have to go through that. And then events is what you said.
Yeah, and I can guide you in this direction. So you mentioned, like, when I asked for an advice, saying, like, okay, we organize events. Mm-hmm. We want to make some impact. We want to make events cool. What would be, like, one piece of advice which you could give? And this gentleman told us, oh, you just got to throw the best party ever. And then you have a successful event. So, and by the way, we have some wine, beer. If you need that to have a good party, go grab some food. We are in a free flow mode. Yeah, let's keep it casual, you know. But the question is like Firebase Summit. Tell us something about events.
Yeah, I got thrown into it's so crazy, right? I'm a software engineer, right? By education, I'm actually a medical computer scientist. Like, and then you end up organizing events. Like, how does that happen for Google, right? Like crazy, but really fun to do. And I took an engineer's approach to event, for example. So I started helping our program manager at Firebase with events. And back when Firebase joined Google, we were 25 people. And we always joked that either we had 1 DevRel or we had 25 DevRel, because it depends. There was one person whose role, or whose job title was DevRel, but everyone there would be going to developer events and like connecting with people, because that's how you get your feedback. And then we had to figure out a way to scale that to like a team of about 300-400 people at Google. And some of them, not necessarily the people that Firebase initially hired, right, who were very much interested in talking directly to developers. So we had to figure out how to make a scalable program for people. And then we had to figure out, like, how do you justify that to your leadership? And it was very interesting to just like, I took a marketing funnel. Like marketing funnel is like awareness, interest, desire, adoption. Does like everyone know this one? I see some yeses, some no's, which is totally fine. Adoption or activation is I buy the Nike sneakers. Like that's what Nike wants, right? Desire is I want to buy the Nike sneakers. I'm not going to buy them unless I want to buy them. Most of us are not impulse buyers when it comes to like sneakers that are hundreds of dollars, right? Interest is like, those look like interesting sneakers. And you actually don't develop a desire until you are interested in the product. And you cannot know that you are interested in Nike sneakers until you know that those exist, right? That's the thing, it's a funnel, right? Like you need 100 million people to be aware of them, so that like 10 million of them are interested, so that 1 million of them are like have a desire, so that like 100,000 of them save up to buy those sneakers. Right? Like that's sort of what you want. And DevRel largely does the same. And I don't necessarily care about the phases, but I do care about thinking, right? You often talk about conversion. Like how many people were at your event? Because those people have shown not at your event, at your talk. Because those people have shown an interest in your product or a desire. Again, I don't care about which phase you glue to where. Right? People that were at the event but not at your talk were at an earlier adoption phase in the funnel, but clearly didn't convert into that. Right? And if you do a workshop at the same event and you get like a smaller number of people there, then you converted those to active users of your product. So I wrote like a short document on that, and that has been used by many teams at Google since then, because it turns out nobody had written that down, which is fascinating. Because things of like, why do you sponsor an event? I was like, and it's like, well, what do I get from the organizer, right? And then it's like, well, you get your name on the banner, you get your name on the website, and you get a talk. It's like, okay, those are 3 things. The talk, right, I just said, it's like, it gets people that are in the room to either interest or desire, right? Whatever we said there. My name on the banner means that people that come into the venue see my name. So that's an awareness type thing, right? An earlier phase thing. And do we also want to pay the extra money for a workshop, which often is quite expensive? Depends on, do we expect that we have enough people there that we can convert to active users there? The moment you start tracking these types of metrics, well, you get promoted at Google. Like that's very simple, right? But also it's the closest you get to the holy grail of DevRel, right? Which is this person paid $5 for Firebase because 7 years ago at an event in Paris, I, for the first time, showed them the real-time database or something, right? Like that one you'll never get, but this funnel you can get. So we did that for all third-party events. We didn't do that for first-party events. First-party events are always different. So the Firebase Summit I organized for 4 years. I was the lead organizer for that. And grew from 350 attendees to about 1,000 in Madrid, which is fun, for sure. Which was always interesting, because I was the lead organizer, so I had to essentially like do all the pitches internally. I was actually not in favor of doing that event series. Not at all. But if somebody tells me to throw a party, I can throw a hell of a party, right? Like that's fine. But I never thought it was worth the effort. One of the things when I realized that this was going to be a series that I was not going to escape was that organizing an event, I found the amount of effort for that type of event was fairly flat. It didn't depend on the number of attendees. So I made it very clear to my leadership that I was going to try and get as many people in the room as I possibly could, and they said, sure, but you're not getting any more budget. I was like, that's fine. I'll find cheaper places. I'll find ways to cut corners, right? But I want more people in that room because it just gives me a better ROI, right, when I have more people there, which is why I typically would aim for a very low threshold event, right? Make sure that everyone who's at the event is entertained, which typically means that, right, so where this is fairly exclusive, right, Firebase Summit was actually very inclusive always, trying to make sure everyone is there. And both are valid events, keep that in mind, right? Just, I'm not going to spend half of my year organizing an event where, honestly, I can justify having 200 people there, right? Because I'm going to do a master class on Firestore data modeling. Right? Well, if it's a master class, you can't do 200 people. You can do maybe 20, 30, right? That just is not worth that amount of time. I totally want to do that master class, but then do less prep. So you always have to think of like, what do I get out of an event before you decide, well, maybe not the first time, but after the first time before you decide how much effort you want to spend on it. And I did tons of that at Google. It's also finding out why people want to go to events and what their big fears are. Right? It's like I had such a blast when I first started doing this, and I was at DevFest in New York. There was an engineer from our team here in Mountain View. She was there, and I met her there. We were like having dinner. I was like, okay, why did you sign up for this event and not another one? She said, well, I have family in Brooklyn here. It's like, it has nothing to do with the event. I was operating a travel agency, right? And that's okay, because that made me realize that I need to make sure that there's interesting places for people to go to. Right? Then you get, what's your biggest fear? And it's like these are engineers at Google who work on, this one product. Right? Like they work on a tiny slice of the platform. But people that come to an event might ask about anything. And in developer relations, we need to be able to deal with that. From a software engineer at Google, I cannot expect that. So what can I do to make sure that they feel comfortable, which is for Google, that was pairing them with a Google developer expert whose travel we would pay. Right? So you would make sure that there was an engineer who knew everything about one thing, and then there was a GDE who knew a bit about everything. And we found out that great friendships were formed there, and that lots of product feedback actually started coming also outside of that event from those people. But it all starts with looking at everyone's needs. Right? What are they trying? Why are they here? What are they trying to accomplish? How can I help with that? Right? And I sent so many people to so many places across the world on Google's dime. And the leadership was fully aware of that. And it was why retention at the Firebase team was highest at Google for any engineering team you would find. Is partially because these types of things, not just this travel, of course, but the whole attitude that you have about your products, the people that work on it, their customers, right? And just making sure that everyone feels valued, but also realizes that if somebody comes up to me at an event and starts yelling about a broken API, that's not my problem. Right? That person is going to be my friend within 30 seconds. That's not that hard. But it is going to be the engineer's problem. Right? And of course, I'm not going to make the engineer cry, but I am going to give him the feedback on that I got from that customer. By the way, one of the things I try to do by sending people across the world is, I always like doing these one-liners that make you chuckle, but it's putting the person suffering the bad API in the same room as the person that caused the suffering, and then making sure that they don't fight. Right? That's what developer relations for me is. I'm not the go-between, I'm not the person that sits between you and your user. Oh gosh, no, I just put you next to that user. Because my life gets a lot easier if I don't constantly have to explain why that API didn't work for that person. Right? And especially with Google engineers, we saw that a lot early in Firebase. We would do developer feedback sessions. One of the things that I picked up at some point. It's bringing in a developer that we know that is reasonably qualified and just having them use the API and then have the engineer sit in the room and telling them, it's you're here as the replacement for the manual and the compiler. If the compiler wasn't there yet, right? It's so you get to answer the questions I give you, right? And I've seen Google software engineers who after that first test, that was the first test, and they couldn't get the app working, right? That was the wrong user. It's like, sure, I'll bring in another one. If you have anything, like what would you like to see different? The week after, it's like, it's probably still the wrong user. Let's focus on, and third week, that software engineer was like almost in tears because again, that developer could not get the API working. Do you think I could ever have convinced this Google software engineer that their API was just not suitable for that audience, right? For the target audience that we identified? No, I don't have to because most people don't want to be an asshole, right? Like if I make sure that they're in the same room, right? Sure, on the first one he can tell me that like this was the wrong audience, right? I selected wrong, but on the third one they're going to be convinced, right? At some point. If not, by the way, we should change the software engineers, but.
Yeah, so it's a two-sided road, right? Yeah. And then, you know, you mentioned events, scaling, etc. But actually, my question is, what was the biggest fuck up on your side during events? So I believe that, you know, like at the last event we had Katie, and she led Google developer events for like 15 years. She was with Google for 15 years, led developer events. And when she started telling the story from Google I/O, Puff actually joined us on stage, and he told us the story of one of the biggest fuck-ups with the sunscreen. So
that was Katie telling that one.
Yes, yeah, that was Katie.
I do know that.
So
one.
I believe if she was here in the room, she could join. She would have joined us here and shared some spicy secret. But since she couldn't make it, please do us a favor and confess. What was your biggest fuck up on the developer event?
There's so many war stories about that first Google I/O at Shoreline, when indeed they converted the parking lot to an event space and didn't realize it was going to be sunny. Google I/O is in the first half of May, and Shoreline Amphitheater is a concert venue, and sort of the first half of May is the last time Google can rent it out for a few weeks before concert season starts. And the reason concert season doesn't start yet is because the weather early May is fairly unpredictable. So the first year it was really sunny. What Katie didn't say is actually there were lots of Googlers taking the Google bikes, the colorful bikes, to all the pharmacies around like Mountain View to grab these little packs of sunscreen for day two. So now my biggest one was, you said, right, throw a party, have booze. So Firebase for 2 or 3 years we organized a party around WWDC, around like Apple's developer event. And any company that does that is just trying to essentially leech a bit of the goodwill that like all these people have towards their own company. Firebase did the same. No knowledge transfer was like it was no goal whatsoever. It was just have people have a good time. I was never the lead organizer on these, but I was responsible for them. So this first one I was traveling, so I couldn't be there. The second one I was there. And who organizes events? Like show rate. It's the bane of our existence, right? How many people show up? Because right, it's like that's the thing. Because you want a full room. You don't mind standing room only, but you do want everyone to like be able to get in, right? And watch your show rate. So with the Firebase Summit, like after 5 years of doing this, 4 years under mine, we got the show rate to be consistently, I think, 47.2%, consistently, which is wonderful, right? It's so cool. By the way, lots of it is guilting people into like, hey, you're signed up. If you're not going to make it, that's totally fine, but then we'd like to give your ticket to somebody else. It's really good messaging there. So the first time we did the WWDC party, we had a show rate of about 40%. So we assumed a similar show rate for the second year. So we had a venue, like had everything organized, and like everything happens. Now, 2 things happened there that were interesting. So I was not the main organizer, but I was there for the second one. Turns out the main organizer decided that he needed to taste all the cocktails that we had them make. So he was not really usable for the rest of the evening. So I had to step in on that one, which is something you always have to be ready for, right? Like you always have to be sure that you are okay. By the way, I had a fun chat with the person like the week after. I asked him, it's like, how did you think the event went? It was great. And this. Did you notice something about what you had to do that night. He did not recall. It was fascinating. Like, he did acknowledge, like, oh, right, I should not have done that. Like, exactly. Like, all good, by the way, not a concern. I don't mind. Like, I want the event to be fine for everyone. But the other thing is our show rate. So the first year that party happened, it was great. The show rate was a lot higher the second year. Word had gotten around. And there was a fire code, so we couldn't let everyone in. So there was a line standing outside, not just because of the speed of checking in, but because the venue was full. So I went outside and I started chatting with those people. And then you get people that are just there, that they want to drink, right? And they're angry at you because you can't freaking count. Right? It wasn't that hard, was it, to make sure no more people get let in? Right? Right? How hard is it? You're at Google, you can count to 300, right? Thing that you want to do there is not get defensive, right? Like, it's like, you're completely right, this was my bad, right? Show rate is higher than I expected, so sorry about it. It's probably going to take another 40 minutes. If that's not okay, there's a bar across the street there, and I think, right, the party over there is not having, like, this line. Right? That's what you need to do. Few things there, right, is always be positive, never be defensive. Like, never, like just never be defensive, just not a thing. But also always provide forward motion, one of the things from Firebase Voice. Right? Don't just tell them, I'm sorry, like that, that's okay, right? You need to mean it, I really did. I really wish I had calculated or estimated that one better. But also give them the options, right? It's gonna take this long, gives them like something to go on. I didn't know the exact number, but it probably was like, right, I just seen how fast people come in. And then, right, give them other options, right? There's a bar here, there's a thing there. That's forward motion, right? Give them a way to move forward. The person waited, had a great time at the party, all fine. Many people were very drunk at that party, by the way. Also be able to deal with that, have a bouncer, right? It doesn't have to be a professional bouncer, it was a Google thing, so we definitely had a professional bouncer there, but like somebody who's able to deal with this.
I'm taking care of that.
Yeah, and it's like, for example, one of the things is, as a speaker, I'm not the bouncer. As the organizer, I might be. But as a speaker, I can never be that, because, or the host or whatever, right? Because I have a public face, you cannot also be the bouncer. Right? Like, that's a bad combination. But if you're just the if you're the behind the scenes host, you're equally, potentially more important, but you're not a public face, so you can do the bouncing a bit. Bouncing is not that bad. Like most people that are drunk, you can steer out fairly easily, by the way.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
Oh, it sounds like...
So I would agree on that. So actually, I think I'm quite proud that our community helped a couple of San Francisco venues to figure out that they have venue capacity and that they should enforce it. Because we fitted 400 people in the venue which was meant for 250, and then they realized that there was a limit for a reason, and people outside also had a pretty good time with the party there. So sometimes a line outside is just an after party for those who are inside.
Yeah, for sure.
So to wrap it up, I want to ask you regarding hackathons. So, for us, as for hackathon organizers, we want them to be as impactful as possible. Probably like the best outcome for sure is for the company on the event is to get funded, to catch the wave, to get some traction. And at our hackathons, we always make sure that they will get like special attention from Techstars, that they will at least be considered for the acceleration there. Basically, we create the funnel for that. And some of our companies actually made it into Techstars. And now with AI, with the speed of change, hosting a 54-hour hackathon doesn't sound like a good fit. So from your perspective, from your experience, what would be the best environment and setup for developers to develop best apps, do some fun and cool projects, and how would you reframe hackathons of today?
Great question. Remember when I talked about the funnel and what I call the activity map, like what activity do you do at what type of event? I had the hardest time with hackathons. Two reasons for that. One of them is I personally don't like doing them because I don't know how I'm helping people. But the other part I had is like, what's the goal of the hackathon, right? What do we get out of it? who's going to invest? The last one I did was tree hacks at Stanford, right? And it's really fun to see people working on something. I have no idea what, at that point, Flutterflow got out of it. Like, sure, now 20 people know Flutterflow, right? That took like an entire weekend for a team of 3-4 people, right? Like, it's a really, the ROI there is not great. So I always found hackathons hardest to justify. So at Firebase, for example, we did hackathons mostly because our team liked going to them. Wholly different reason, right? Like very different. And then if somebody actually at that hackathon like became a user, that was sort of like an extra bonus. But nowadays I see, who knows Bolt.new? I should tell you about the Firebase history of that product, by the way. But Bolt.new just did a hackathon. Who has heard about that one? Yeah, community folks, okay. They're in the Guinness, well, I'm actually not sure. They were going to be in the Guinness Book of Records. I have no idea if that happened. But to be the world's largest hackathon with $1 million in prizes. That was decided pretty much overnight on some socials, right? Like the Bolt founder, Stackbase founder, like somebody said, why don't you do like a huge hackathon? And he was like, sure. But before he had the funding or anything ready, he had just said yes. Now, the world's largest hackathon, 1 million in prizes, doing a pre-party and like a during 5 during parties probably, for a online hackathon. That was a well-executed hackathon, done by the folks at dev.post, I think, DevPost? Yeah. Who are like known for doing these very well. But that was for me a hackathon that I was like, wow, I wish I could pull something like that off, right? But it's aiming big, because then you get a good return. Their product, of course, is very early hype cycle still. That helps a ton for them, right? Their timing has been so good. Honestly, their entire go-to-market for Bolt has been, case studies will be made of this, because they've done it so well. Because like Bolt, V0 was the first one that I heard of these types of things. Lovable exists, right? These tools exist, and somehow Bolt is riding that wave to perfection. They're amazing in what they do there. And the hackathon for me was one where I was like, that takes balls. And given the number of things I've done, I don't make that statement very often, right? Like, I'm usually like, sure, it's just something you need to execute. This one was like, wow, you have to have the balls to do that.
Okay, then we are noticing like to turn a hackathon into a rock concert or a rave would be our goal. Okay, and since you mentioned vibe coding, this part, so different opinions, hard opinions and stuff, but what bothers me the most is all the marketing communication from vibe coding companies is actually make fast bucks, get rich fast. And it doesn't feel like your love for technology aligns well with what they're actually selling to people. Yeah. They don't tell you, build beautiful software, make apps people would love. No, they say, make money. How do you like this? Is this like a hustle culture? What's the reason for that? We'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I've had lots of discussions with people about like how to deal with vibe coding. And keep in mind, right, my mentality is more people building more apps. This is more people. I love it. So when I confront people who are very negative about vibe coding, and I have a good discussion with them, it's often indeed what you're saying. It's not just the people that are the vibe coders, it's the promise that companies make. You have to look no further than the GPT-5 announcement. Sorry, Sam, like you're not going to like this one, but GPT-5 is not a bad new model or anything. It's like pretty decent. That keynote was the worst I've seen in at least 7 years. I won't say which one it was where it was worse. It was a Google one, and the reason for that is I was watching it because I'm a fan of the things they do. The technology they build is great. So one of the first things they did was like having it vibe code a Bernoulli demonstration. So an animated vector animation for Bernoulli. And Bernoulli is like what creates lift in an airplane. And for me, that hit home personally because as a kid, I was at some point in the Science Museum in London where they had a machine that would blow air and smoke. And you could move the wing, so you could see it move. So that's what I expected to see, right? Like I was waiting to get that vibe coded. This took 8 to 10 minutes to generate, so they were like doing some other things. But I was like, that's totally fine, because if you can generate something like that, that's amazing. The demo that came out was somewhat disappointing. It was an animation of showing like little bubbles moving up and down over wings, but it was the one 20 plus years ago in the Science Museum in London was much better, right? Like, still, it was amazing that it generated something working. Like, for me, anything that gets auto-generated that works is spectacular. It's like, it's amazing because I didn't have to type these things. The thing that is what most of us are so angry about is the lines they say after that. See, it can do anything you tell it to do. You just told it one thing, that it did mediocre, which in my world is like, look at that, that's amazing what it did here, right? But now you say, look, it can do anything. And they did that at 4 or 5 spots in that keynote. All the executives did the same thing. And it was so bad. Because a lot of things didn't work. And then you get people that are like, look, your charts have the wrong labels. Look, this doesn't work. But it's because you overpromise. Don't overpromise. So I was having a discussion like with somebody from the Flutter community who's very negative about it. And for me, right, the vibe coding thing is like, it's a new tool. It's not a brain, it's not a person, it's a tool. And I'm enjoying trying to figure out what the tool can do for me and where it fails. I enjoy both. Again, when it fails to put a semicolon at the end of the statement, I think it's rather stupid at some point, but that's okay. Other people are treating it as people. So I said, it's a tool, and I'm enjoying to figure out what it does. Then I said, you're in the meanwhile, some of the negative people, standing in the corner there yelling at the hammer. Well, simple joke, totally okay. And he responds with like, but you don't get it, Puff. That hammer is driving in 99% of all the nails wrong. I was like, oh, I get it very much. You just proved my point. I'm looking at the 1% of the nails that wouldn't have been inserted without that tool. Because somebody apparently who doesn't know how to operate a hammer normally was able with this tool to drive in a nail. Right. I'm totally fine, right? Like when we talk about what's a reasonable ratio for this system to fail versus succeed, and that the 1% is not great or something. Like, I get that. How much energy are we burning? Where Google is doing stellar work, for example, in reducing energy consumption. Right? Like all these things I'm totally fine with. But at the end of the day, I find it really exciting to see that this tool can sometimes generate something that works. And because it can do that for me, who could do it like myself. It's just a faster typer than I am. But it can also do it for somebody who's not me. And that person couldn't do it. So it's an enabling technology for them. And I love me some enabling technologies.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. So probably it was a great, the very last point of my side that what I really enjoyed about Puff and his approach and philosophy is the integrity. So when we had a call preparing for this interview, he told me that part of DevRel's job and his philosophy there is you should be on, like, you will be onboarding developers who might not be qualified to build the things that they build. And I was like, wow, that's super deep, but kinda, it shows a lot of love for humankind, for developers, for technology. And now when we are talking about vibe coding, we basically see the same approach in here. So I really appreciate that. And probably integrity and the way you approach everything like made you have that impact on the industry, on the profession. Because also Puff mentioned that DevRel used to be just a developer who could speak. And now, and that's a true profession. Now in job description, that won't be enough. Yeah? So I think we should all celebrate like how this industry and profession evolved. We should make applause to Puff for being amazing. And probably we really appreciate that 18,000 questions you answered, they went in some LLM data sets. And people who are vibe coding, they are at least spiritually and through some tokens are connected to you and your philosophy. So thank you all. I hope you enjoyed. And let's keep the event going. Again, we have some wine, we have beer. We probably should have plenty of food. So enjoy yourself and have a great event.